October board meeting of Ignite CDA, Coeur d'Alene's Urban Renewal Agency. If you'll all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, the agenda item is for public comment. Anybody out there with public comment? Commissioner Arman, you going for public comment or? Seeing none, now is time for approval of minutes for the September board meeting.
Move to approve the minutes of the September 20th, 2017 board meetings.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any corrections or anything on there? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, downtown parking structure construction bid. Please come forward, Miller Stauffer, to talk about our parking garage. Thanks.
Want to do any introduction, Tony, or should I just?
No, just go ahead.
Okay. As you're aware, we went out for bids for the downtown parking structure, which summarizes a 360 space structure south of Coeur d'Alene Avenue between 3rd and 4th. We had 6 bidders, which is an extraordinarily good turnout. You have a handout in front of you which has, as the slide shows up, probably will not read real well. And the only columns that are going to really be important here are the very first gray box, which lists the 6 contractors under the base bid. The rest of it is just adding and subtracting alternates to give us different totals, but really all the information is in the very first box. Tila Riviere was the low bidder at 7,355. This is the same organization formerly known as CNI that you will recognize. The original estimate was $6 million on this work. I think we were, and that wasn't optimism. I think all estimating is done historically with a inflation factor. As we've all watched, and I know you've been involved in different construction projects over the year, this has been one of those extraordinary periods where it's moving so fast you can't quite catch up to it. But this is about a 20% swing from where we started out, and I think with your building committee, we did 4 months ago or so, we said that we thought that this is probably in the area where it was going to land. That was just where it was going in discussions with subs, that people were pretty much, not arbitrarily, because things are inflating, but just adding 20% to stuff because they can right now. And in this industry, it's you make hay when the sun's out, and so we don't begrudge them to do that, because there's lots of times when they're putting together numbers where they're not making any money. So this is just the market that we're in right now. We did bid 2 alternates. They are not of great consequence. First, let me talk a little bit about schedule. Should you decide to move forward with this, we have all the comments back from the city's building division, both architecturally and life safety and structural. They've been responded to. So we believe a building permit is imminent, and when I say imminent, within the next week to 10 days. So you're in very good shape there, and there's no large items of concern there. So paperwork, 2 to 3 weeks, and if you were so inclined, we could issue a notice to proceed basically first part of November. 240-day contract, which is the way the specifications are set up, that gets you done basically by the 4th of July. You do have a liquidated damages clause within the contract that calls for $1,000 a day, and I was explaining to your executive director that typically the liquidated damages clauses do not have a lot of teeth, because it's difficult to show how you're damaged on a lot of these projects. A lot of times you're inconvenienced, but you're not necessarily damaged. But in this case, where you've got a revenue stream that's set up with the parking garage, there's all of a sudden, the revenue is not there, and so there's some black and white damages from day one. So we do see that that's an effective club in this job. One of the alternates was extending the time period, and the contractors weren't especially crazy about that. They weren't really giving us any money to have more time. There had been some discussion early on that they wanted more time and they would bid more attractively if they had more time, and they really weren't doing that. So we floated the balloon, and we're not greatly successful with that. The other alternate had to do with, we have two required stair towers, one with an elevator in there. And this is the way they are set up. They're basically 2-hour boxes that allow you to enter and exit the building. We had talked at length with our design committee of one of the things that was really important, we thought, was that nice visibility inside and outside of these stair towers. So no matter where you approach them from, you could always see in, and so people felt safe. And so that even from a law enforcement standpoint, when you drive by, you can see in the stair towers, see if there's people in there, to see if there's activity. And so on the outside, on the street side, that's not very challenging, that's very easy. But on the inside, we're required a 2-hour separation. When you put 2-hour windows into a wall, the industry is extremely proud of this product. And so this is what we were proposing, was to put more glass in the stair tower. I'll go back one more time. That's what we've got in the base bid. This is what we were proposing on this stair tower. And then on the other one, we were proposing this to open these up further. Those 3 openings on essentially 4 floors, but it ends up being 5 places, is worth about $160,000 because this glass goes in at about $350 a square foot.
That's all.
That's all. So for this much glass. So what we would like, once again, should you decide to move forward with anything, we would like some latitude in maybe scaling that down, finding some areas of glass that we can still create some of that visibility and view angle, and maybe just do a third as much, but basically try and do $50,000 worth rather than $150,000 worth. So anyway, that's the second alternate, but it's an both of them are ad alternates. The first one, we do not recommend that you have any interest in at all. And the second one, we would like to scale it down and see that maybe we add some glazing and take that back to the building committee and see that they're either on board or not on board with that.
Was the first alternate the additional time frame?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, it didn't gain us a little bit.
And it's in some gave us small ad or deducts, and some gave us a couple big ads. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to it. So we don't see it as having any value to the project because it puts you 60 days down the road for no apparent value. These are just the elevation of the glass products that we're looking at, but they're good sized windows, but that glass is very spendy. Anything else I can tell you on the numbers or on the process moving forward?
Chairman? Dick, were there any thoughts done in this process if we knew we were going to be over budget or what we had in it as to how we could possibly save some money?
Yes. First of all, it's not a simple structure, but it's not a complicated project, if that makes any sense to you. There's some complicated detailing, but it's a very simple, it's 4 levels that are all basically the same of post-tension slab. So the suggestions that come back, and when you talk about getting some money, we were talking about getting gobs of money, not getting $10,000,
Right.
but getting $1 million or $500,000 or something like that out of it. And so the suggestion was, let's take a level out. Let's go get 1.1 or something like that and take 90 spaces out of it. Or let's strip off the architectural features on the outside, which are the brick and the windows and those things. And they're both worth quite a bit of money. I think we could, I don't have all the elevations here, but the backside on the alley just has spandrel panels and openings like you would see a traditional parking garage. It doesn't have the brick or the window openings or the signage or the canopies. And I will offer that with a caveat that these are things your design, your municipal design review committee has, I don't know if mandate's the right word, but that's what they want, and that's what and the design committee within your commission has also pushed hard for those things. So neither of the two things that we thought were places to get big chunks of money were not good ideas by the larger group. So yes, there were some ideas floated.
How much would those ideas have saved?
A level of the parking garage, we see, I think you can very reasonably say it's $1 million plus for a level of parking garage. And once again, and if you take all the ornamentation off it, that's probably worth $1 million as well.
So it's masonry then on the outside, right?
Yeah, and there's, and it's never quite as simple as those things, but this masonry, and in order to make it as affordable as possible, this is structural masonry. So instead of putting up a concrete wall and then putting brick on it, or putting up, framing of some sort and then putting veneer on it, this is actual 8-inch thick. It goes up like concrete masonry and it fills with mortar, and so that is the finished product going up in an effort, so we're not doing two systems. So that was the most economic way to get those. I think the directives, I think, from both the design review and from people working on the design committee were that, we want this pedestrian friendly. We want this to not look like a parking garage, at least at the lowest levels. We want there to be some color and texture. We want to have a retail component. We want the ability on the other end. We have some display windows that can be leased for advertising. They're only, this deep, but you can put some product and some signage in them. Those are on the far end. We have some color at the entryways to make this. And yes, it does cost, but I think in the urban setting and based on the way this has been described and put forward, I think this is a good solution.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, everybody has a lot of wants, right?
Sure.
But we're within some budget limitations, and, to be $1.2 million over budget is a little concerning.
Yeah, and let me, to not belabor the point, but I think, the needle moved, when this started. I think there's no question about that.
Have we explored alternatives to the exterior, though? I mean, if we do a two-piece construction, like you had mentioned?
I think that, once again, some of this is a little bit all or nothing. I think we do it or we don't do it. And do we have the old presentation still here? I wanted to spin you back on the alley to show you that's all stripped down. That does not have any of the ornament or the window opening. It's got chain link fence where we have openings, and it's just got the spandrel panels. And these linear pieces here where it's open, where you see the cars, on the alley side, these go all the way down. So these for that whole 300 feet on the alley side, that's all you have, and that is basically, it's pure parking garage. And we justified that in the alley because it was a place to make the best budget we could. And certainly that can be done on 4 sides. This is your retail component here. There's about 1,000 square feet of leasable there. The 2 blue areas are the vehicle entry points. Some of this, the tall area here, there's one on both the north and the south side. Those are shear walls. Those stiffen the building, and so those need to be solid boxes. You have 2 required stairwells. And as I say, stripping all this out, you have to have 2 towers in this building. Those are code requirements. There's stairways. There's an elevator in this one. They don't need to have all that glass in them. But you can see on level, 3 and 4 up, it's about as simple as you can make it. It is there's two masters here, and it's a tough one. I think this is a very appealing urban garage, and I think that was the directive for the most part, and certainly it could look like a pure parking structure.
Deanna?
So this is 4 levels, so if we took a level off, we'd save $1 million.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that, and I don't know what the number is. You need to do that,
Approximately.
but it's, yeah.
And we decided to go 4 because of the long term.
And Tony, you might help me out with this one. You have 90 spaces on site, is that correct?
Currently there?
Yeah.
I don't think it's that many. I think it's in the 50s.
Okay.
Sam, do you know? 50? 50.
Okay, you have 50 on site. There was your parking study said you need 225, 220. So there's 270 right there, and that's today, right? Am I correct with that, Sam? And the suggestion was that, we need to not build for today. We need to move it one step further, and that's how we got up to the 360. And this, and none of these things are absolutes, but your site is 300 by 110, and you can put approximately 90 cars on that size of a plate. So to be as efficient as possible, you use as much of it as you can, and so you go 90, 180, 270, 360, and that's kind of where you get there. So you can start doing half levels and moving in between, but you start to lose efficiency as you do that.
And 90 spaces for $1 million is pretty low cost, really. I mean, the rule of thumb, as we've talked about, between $15,000 and $20,000 a space.
Sure.
It wouldn't be wise to pare off a floor.
We don't think so either. We think that's, I think there was, and I probably can't relive all of it here, but there were, I think, at length discussions at Design Review Committee and talking not only about number, but about the architectural detailing, about, there wasn't a lot of place to go with this. And I think for what Steve just said is, we looked at that and somebody said, no, that's foolish to come backwards like that. That kind of starts to defeat the purpose.
Well, I don't, of course, have the history on the financial, but I do have a lot of history of being in building projects for public entities and all of that, and, different time. I can't ever remember a time that, I've been in a situation where I said, oh, man, we got it wrong, we overbuilt that one. It's always the other direction. It's never cheaper going forward than it is now. And again, I don't know if we've got the money or if it's going to be, if we're really going to cut out doing something else, and I guess that's a consideration. But otherwise, I think having a little bit of growth built in and the aesthetics, I think that's very important to the people. So, I can't answer that, do we have enough money or not, but if there's any way to stay with that, I think that's kind of a minimum, but it's a great project.
At some point, I think Tony can go over, there's ways to get the money for this. But it's all trade-offs, though.
Right.
We spend more on this, there's less in something else. But I agree with you and the mayor. I could go right down the list of undersized public facilities that have been built that weren't really even adequate when they were built, to try and make the budget work. And we're running out of long-term spaces already in McEwen, and we've had talks in the parking commission already about if some big projects go up in this area, then we could all of a sudden start eating up a whole lot of spaces in this really quick. So I agree with you, I don't think cutting the size down is really the way to go. If I had to take one or the other, I'd probably make it more bare bones looking than to take the parking capacity out. I don't really want to do that, but I think that'd be the lesser evil than to take the parking capacity out, because I think we could probably, use up this parking capacity fairly quick.
Tony, can you explain the budget to us?
Sure.
What, 1.3 million over?
Yeah, so in the budget, we have $6.5 million for this initiative. We have $500,000 in special reserve accounts, so that's $7 million. But we also only, on the revenue side, we only are drawing $7.5 million of the $10 million bond. So we have additional bond capacity to borrow from if we chose to. So you do have the funding available, but to Commissioner Jordan's statement, it would be an opportunity cost. If you use money for this project, you wouldn't use it for something down the road.
Prioritize.
And
So what we're talking about is kind of a judgment call. The judgment is what is most valuable at this point in time for the long-term benefit of the community, which is kind of what we do anyway, is make judgment calls all the way down the line. So this one is very important, I think, to the community.
Brad?
Long-term health in terms of building out that northern part of town.
All I was going to throw in there was, I don't know, the mayor and I talked a little bit about this, I don't know what latitude we have either to look at working with a low bidder here on making some changes, to try and bring the budget in line a little bit. I don't know at what point, maybe that's a question for legal, at what point we have to, and there's legal, what point we have to, to rebid this, or how much we can work with a low bidder. If this was a private project, it'd be real simple. You'd sit down and say, well, what can we do? What if we pull this or move this or give more time for this? But what latitude do we have before we start to get into problems making too many changes and, horse trading with the low bidder?
I truthfully can't answer that on the
Okay.
spot. I rely on one of our other public works attorneys for that advice, so I could certainly reach out to him quickly if you want a response right now, but I don't know how much flexibility you have. I don't want to lead you astray.
My understanding is that if you bid a project, you don't have a whole lot of latitude in that process.
That's what I'm concerned about. I've been involved in private projects, and you sit down with the contractor, and he'll say, well, there's a whole lot of money in this. If this wasn't quite as important to you, we could save a lot of money doing this or pulling this out. But we're in a really probably some tight parameters here, being a public project. So I don't know if there's, if there's anything there, or what. I probably would be good to know that, because maybe there's $200,000 or $300,000 we could, find doing something. I don't know. I'm just looking for alternatives here.
And I think it needs to be at least remembered that, you do have an ordinance, a downtown design ordinance that requires certain things, and it's certainly subjective on some level, but you've got a group that has basically blessed some things, and they do have some criteria that they judge, and a lot of the things that here, whether it's lighting, it's texture, it's color, it's
Right.
things on there that they have requested, basically.
Right.
This is a tough one, because you're right, Deanna. It comes down to a judgment call. But I think the thing that we have to look at is there were 6 bids on this. It's not like we're dealing with one bid. So there was 6 different contractors that all looked at this project with the same lens and came up with the conclusion that this was the fair value to build this out based on the specifications that are there. So I think we really have 2 answers here. One is to accept the low bid and move forward with the project as it is. I think we could start to slice and dice it as much as you want to. I agree with Steve. I think this is impossible to build the 3rd or the 4th floor any less expensive than we currently are at these prices. Aesthetically, yes, it's a beautiful project, but I think that's what we want, is a beautiful project on that corner. It's, you look at some of the other parking facilities around the area, they look pretty mundane and pretty bland. So I think for the amount of money we would save, unfortunately, it's probably not a great savings for what you're going to end up turning this into. You're right, Tony, we do have the money in the budget. We actually had this bid out at a higher price than what we originally thought. We thought it was going to come in higher, so we kind of allocated money that way. I guess in my opinion, we just have to bite the bullet and realize we're in a very difficult time for construction. There's a lot of wood going up all over the area right now, and contractors are hard to come by. And we either wait and do this sometime down the road when the economy slows down, and we wait and see what happens, or we just bite the bullet and go forward. My opinion is probably gonna be due time just to move forward, so,
I
anyway.
agree too, that with taking a floor off with the exciting things that we hear about that are happening in that area right now, I think removing parking spots would be a bad thing to do. And we talked about this thing filling up and building another one, so. So I agree with you.
I think that's a false economy.
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion to approve the low bid of T. LaRiviere Construction for $7,355,800 to build the downtown parking structure.
I'll second
We have a motion and a second, and I'd like to make some clarification in the add alternates in there.
No.
The first add alternate was out. And the second one for the glass, you talked about just working with them.
Yeah, once again, after hearing the discussion, I think we've got something that meets all the criteria that's been laid out, and we'll live with that.
Motion and second.
So the no add alternates?
No add alternates.
And that's the second? No add alternates? Okay.
There was no alternates that made any difference, so was there?
Just the glass.
Added.
Added.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have just a little bit. So I wasn't 100% clear. The windows will be there no matter what, or that is?
The windows on the outside will be there no matter what. There's also a small window in the door itself, which will be there no matter what. It's the internal windows that open, make more visibility into the garage, and I've got wheels turning right now as we're doing this, that there's some code implications that, maybe we can put those doors on magnets into the fire system and, hold them open that way so that there's I don't know the answer to that without looking at my books. But there are some other ways to skin the cat, possibly.
Being female, I have to say, being able to see into a stairwell and being able to see into an elevator is important,
Yeah,
especially in a parking garage situation. So I really think we need to start to look at making sure that we have that visibility, even if it does cost, us to add an alternate.
Mr. Chairman, I guess that's a pretty big number, the 7,355 number, and I would hope that we could work that into the number. There could be some savings.
else to trade.
There could be some savings in there, and I would,
Good idea.
I think you could probably find the money within that.
And this comes
that
back
budget
to
to do
Brad's comments, that I'm confident that limited kind of horse trading can take place. The wholesale changes and trying to VE a project does get sideways, I think, with the bidding laws fairly quickly. But taking a small element out and adding another one in is done all the time.
Just for clarification, add alternate 2 for the glass is $161,600.
Yeah, and I think in my presentation, I said that we thought that maybe we could scale that back into something less that was still effective and accomplished the goals.
I think it's very important that we, maybe down the road, we may have to make a decision on it, but I think it's very important that you have that visibility into the stairwells.
I'll just repeat the motion. Motion by Commissioner Whitmire, second by Commissioner Goodlander to award the construction contract for the downtown parking garage facility to T. LaViere in the base bid amount of $7,355,800.
No add alternates,
No add alternates, that's it.
but to work the design over to
Yeah,
get the
and the
glass.
design team has noted that should be continued to be researched.
If you have to come back or we have to revise it down the road, we can do that, but I think that's just a very important component of any type of, it's a safety issue.
Question, Mr. Chairman. So are we in agreement to go ahead and have council, do a little research on how much latitude we have to do limited horse trading, as he's talking about?
Once again, I'll defer to Danielle, but I'm confident that we can do some minor.
I can work with Dick and
Yeah.
John in my office on that, but
Yeah.
I
That's
think
all
that
I'm
there is
asking.
some flexibility. I just don't know where that lands, so I didn't want to tell you there was more than.
That's
there
all
really-
I'm asking, just see where the flexibility is.
Yeah.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Nice project. That's a long time coming. How many years?
It's great.
I think it started before the crash.
How many years have we been budgeting for parking?
Long time. Long time.
Until Tom and speak was
Next
coming.
item is reports. Finance report, Commissioner Arman.
Well, after spending $7 million, it's a little step back, I guess. It's a bit of a check here. Well, let's take a look at the current situation. The Lake District, we'll start out with the balance sheet. The assets column, the Lake District experienced a $189,121 decrease in cash assets from the month of August end. There were no major receivables and other assets. The Lake District 2016 Series Note Reserve Account earned $26 on the balance for the month of September. On the liabilities and fund balance side, the mortgage and notes payable line item decreased $5,984 for September, represents a standard month of debt service. All other liability parameters were either unchanged or normal for the month, including the 2% credit to the arts for the month. The Lake District P&L report, the Lake District received $5,465 in tax increment revenue from this county in September. Agency-funded Initiative Four Corners project shows a zero, reflects a payment on the Memorial Park for nothing there. Professional fees line item includes payments to Welsh Comer for $7,990 for the North Park Drive work, and Miller Stauffer for $69,508 for the parking facility project work. Repair and maintenance line item includes $6,461 for sealing and striping the midtown lots. Dues and sponsorship line item was $5,000 payment to Jobs Plus. Insurance line item includes the half of the 2018 ICRIMP policy premium, and all other expenditure line items were normal for the month. Now to the River District, the balance sheet for the assets. The River District experienced $795,505 decrease in cash assets from August month end, due primarily to the payments on the Celtics Way revitalization project. All other assets were basically the same. On the liabilities and fund balance section, all liabilities and parameters, including the 2% credit due to the arts, were pretty normal. For the River District P&L, the River District received $1,157 in tax increment revenue from the county in September. The agency-funded program light items includes a $744,507 payment made to the Celtics Way project. Professional fees line item includes payments made to Welsh Comer for $2,279 and to Cushland and Associates for $4,609 for the work on an Atlas Mill site initiative. Dues and sponsorships line item reflects the second half or the other half of the $5,000 payment to Jobs Plus. Insurance line item includes the half of the fiscal year 2018 payment for the ICRIMP policy, and all other P&L expenditures were the same. So that is the financial report for October.
Thank you, sir.
So now on to payables. Not as much payables this month as we have in the past. First of all, we have a payment to Elam and Burke for $3,095.85. $1,000, I'm sorry. Need my glasses. $1,095.85. Holly Troxel, $8,310. Redevelopment Association of Idaho, $1,650, and this breaks out to $850 for the 2018 membership dues and $800 for the fiscal year 2018 legislative contribution. Payment to CDA 2030 for $25,000. That's our annual payment to them. Summit Environmental Engineering for $1,300. That's the asbestos abatement. That's hard to say. Asbestos abatement for 213 4th Street building. $4,569.88 for Tilford Lane Property Initiative. And the Celtics Way Road Revitalization Project, $246,174.39, broken out with $157,374.39 going to the contractor Tila Riviere, and $88,800 going to Welsh Comer Engineers. Downtown parking structure design project, which we've heard about just a few minutes ago, $23,574.74 to the Miller Stauffer design team. And lastly, the Four Corner project, the memorial field element, a total of $56,935.58. That was broken out, $42,560 to Welsh Comer Construction and $14,375.58 to the North Park Drive subdivision. All total expenditures or payables for the month were $368,610.44.
I'll entertain a board motion to approve the financials and the payables.
I'll move to approve the financials for the River and Lake District and the payables.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any other corrections or any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next committee report is for parking. Commissioner Gordon?
Mr. Chairman, just real quickly,
Spending $7.355 million.
yeah, this pales in comparison to that. So the demolition is almost totally complete on the site of the parking structure, and I think there's just a couple stumps left by the alley, and then there's a little basement at that building at the southeast corner there by the alley and 4th Street. And that was the password paging building in the 1980s, and I think more recently it was an antique shop. And the basement is still there, and they're going to finish taking that out when the project is ready to start. They're a little concerned about some soil sloughing off and undermining the alley or the street. So if you're wondering about the alley, that'll come out shortly here. And that's about it.
Okay.
Ready to go.
Next is the executive director's report. Mr. Burns.
Mr. Chairman, the first item is the railroad right-of-way surplus property sale sealed bid opening. Just to refresh everybody's memory, I'll bring up a graphic depicting the area that we're looking to sell through the process. It's the pink area here. This is BB Boulevard and Riverstone. This is the Belle Reeve development. La Peep is right here. Ignite CDA owns this pink railroad property that was abandoned by Burlington Northern Santa Fe that the agency acquired. The yellow is the Union Pacific property that is for sale currently. And the blue is the old railroad right-of-way corridor that reverted to the Bureau of Land Management that the city of Coeur d'Alene is going to lease. So that is the geography of where the sale property is located. We have received one sealed bid for this property. As you recall, the board set the minimum price for this property at $320,000. And Chairman Hoskins has the bid, and we'll open it now.
This is getting dramatic.
Dramatic.
And then I'll hand it to Danielle to read. The bid is from Active West Developers. And the bid is for $320,000.
Tony, it looks like it's outlining the title issue that you and I had discussed. Do you want to maybe share that with the board?
So there's a unique issue here. I'll refer to the graphic that has been identified to me. So, wrong mouse. So the Active West Development has been actively working to acquire the Union Pacific piece of property. And through their due diligence, they've been working with title companies. And apparently this line from about right here up towards BB Boulevard that separates the Union Pacific line from our ownership is hard to quantify where it is or hard to locate where it is. And the title companies are having a real struggle locating this. Now, if you look at the mouse and you go to the east down here, the title company can find records delineating that separation of property, but they can't find records delineating this part of the property, so that the title companies are not comfortable yet in order to issue the necessary, what's the right word, Danielle, the necessary entitlements to this transaction, even though if this purchase goes through, these two parcels will be combined and that line will go away. So it's kind of a unique situation, but it is a situation with the title company right now, even though that interior line will go away when these two 60-foot right-of-ways are joined. So I think that's what Danielle's referring to in the offer. I'm not sure if there's a condition or...
So, what Active West is offering is that they will purchase the property with pursuant to the terms of the bid form, which says the minimum price of $320,000, so I assume that that's what they mean. It says terms similar to those contained in the bid form, so I think we'd want to confirm that they were willing to pay that minimum price, but they would want a due diligence period to resolve these title issues. They also raised the issue of the soils cleanup not being included. Maybe we could speak to that too, that we've, I think since then learned that that's not necessary.
Right, from the environmental reports that we've received, it doesn't seem necessary to remove any of the gravel or that upper level part of the right-of-way. It doesn't seem to be an issue from a due diligence standpoint. We do have a member of Active West here, if the board would like to visit with the bidder on any of these issues. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, Danielle, but
I think that's fine. I mean, with them being the only bid, and the bid doesn't technically meet the specifications of the bid packet because there isn't a deposit, and he didn't want to make a non-refundable deposit because of this title issue. But when you receive no bids under the statute that allows you to sell property surplus, you can then proceed forward to sell it however you want. So if the board wants to entertain this offer from Active West, I think you could do that. So I think it's fine to talk to them. If we had other bids, I think we would have to handle it differently, but.
so Dennis, you want to come up and maybe you can explain your offer to the board a little bit more.
Dennis Cunningham, Active West Development. So Tony was correct. Through the process of the Alta survey on the Ignite site, the pink as well as the entire yellow, there has been an item that has been unresolved, and the title and escrow as well as the underwriter that would provide insurance on title insurance is the location of that area that Tony has discussed. And some of it goes back into the early 1900s of trying to locate that boundary. Back then, they were offsets of the railroad tracks. Now that there's no tracks, they've gone back and looked at engineering and survey documentation over 75 to 80 years. But there's still about a 3-foot discrepancy of where that line is between those two parcels. As of last week, there was some records found in Spokane in their files where we only had half of the document and we found the other half. And I mean, honestly, these things almost look like scrolls. So really what we have is the city acquired the site under a quitclaim. And so the bid proposal was for us to also buy it under a quitclaim. And if you can imagine, that's 120 years of items on the property that no one's cleaning up. So we've had to incur a considerable amount of money to go through that process to determine where all these lines show up. Our proposal was, pardon, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, and I inquired this of Tony, but I guess I'm a little confused about why the title company is so focused on where that boundary is when you're going to own both sides of it and it's going to be joined into one parcel. It seems that boundary line becomes a lot less important when the two properties are put together.
Right, and so I don't know the final answer to that question, but as of right now, you are asking me to buy that property in 30 days. under your bid package. I don't own the other property. So there probably is a way that that might merge. However, that might be resolved before we would have to get into an agreement with UP to do a simultaneous closing and get rid of that line. But as of right now, that's not that we're discussing right now. We're discussing, that proposal came out, said buy it as a quick claim, and in 30 days close. And that's kind of what we're addressing. Parallel to that, we're doing exactly what you're saying, and also parallel to that is seeing if it can't get resolved. There has been, as of today, there has been good news in regards to some of that. So the proposal that we had put back together was, we agree on the price, we agree on the deposit, we want to proceed, but we didn't understand, that was the first time I heard the clarification from the last meeting that the soil was going to be cleaned up because it was needed somewhere else. I didn't know that was taking place, so we just addressed it. Not that it was a significant issue. And then a little bit of time here to try to navigate our way through, because it just doesn't cause an issue with your acquisition. It's also the same issue on the other side. Prior, there was discussions about a quiet title action, which was another sort of big issue. I think that's been, as of now, that's been pushed aside, and I think there's more of a somewhat faster resolution. But your comment is what frustrates me all the time, and Tony and I talked about it at a meeting. The line's eventually, potentially just going to go away. But I got to go focus on the acquisition of a parcel, A or B, whichever one it is, to define it so they can underwrite it.
Seems
Because
like
eventually I'm going to
that
put
could be solved by a simultaneous closing to me, though.
And so now I'm dealing with Union Pacific, and I'm dealing with Ignite. It's not like your grandma and her mom, you know what I'm saying?
I appreciate dealing with Union Pacific.
And our responses to Union Pacific have to be done snail mail, by a certain place in Omaha at a certain time. So, I mean, and there's a committee. I'm sure you're sensitive to some of that, but, so anyway, there's no lack of interest. We just need a little bit more breathing room to sort out that. We did propose that maybe there's some kind of, and I don't know the appropriate way, but some type of purchase contract that gets to put together and give us 90 days to come back and say, these are our findings. Anyway, that, without getting too much more into it, that's kind of where.
So is the 90-day term in your letter?
I think it does say at the
It is,
bottom,
yeah.
just we could enter into some, and I don't know that.
Due diligence period, 90 days.
Yeah, I don't know that, Tony, the specific, how that gets done, but just give us some time to put that through and see where we go.
So the board could accept the offer for $320,000 with a 90-day due diligence period for title issues, and then and require the $3,200 deposit, but which would be refundable if the title issues couldn't be resolved and closed at the end of that 30-day period. It's pretty typical in a purchase and sale agreement that there is a due diligence period. Because we acquired this property with a quick claim, I wouldn't recommend that we give him anything different than that, frankly. I mean, because what he's outlining is exactly what it does happen when you acquire property from the railroad, right? So you don't want to get in the middle of that chain of title by insuring it to him. But we could put together a purchase and sale agreement that would end with a quick claim deed, assuming his due diligence is completed to his satisfaction in 90 days.
So how would you structure a draft motion for the board to address this, if they want to? So,
Move to approve the offer from Active West for $320,000, require, immediate deposit of the $3,200 earnest money, and allow for a 90-day due diligence period for title, with the $3,200 being refundable if the title can't be resolved satisfactorily to Active West.
Now, normally, there would also be a proposed closing date.
Right, we could
part
put,
of
I
that.
would say the 90 days is that proposed closing date.
Okay.
Is that fair?
I'm just asking, I didn't know if
Maybe-
there was
so maybe-
some
or
time
maybe we
between
give
the
it-
due,
we-
maybe 30 days after
30
the
days
90-day
after.
due diligence
That's fair.
period? Okay.
So 120-day close, 90-day due diligence period,
That sounds logical.
and the deposit goes hard then.
They're always a challenge.
It's tricky. I mean, we spent a lot of time looking at that title and trying to do everything we could to figure out where stuff was, but this isn't an issue that we came across.
Tony, I would make that motion.
Second.
You guys are
Second. While Tony's typing, I'll just say that Danielle and I learned yesterday on a conference
Mayor
call
seconded.
that the DEQ said that that soil was okay.
That's great. It's good to do.
All right, hold on here. Okay, so motion by Commissioner Arman, second by Commissioner Whitmire, accepting the sealed bid provided by Active West in the amount of $320,000 for the purchase of the agency's right-of-way property located east of Beebe Boulevard, contingent upon the immediate deposit of the earnest money and providing a 90-day due diligence period with a closing date 30 days following that, the end of that due diligence period.
I would say a 90-day due diligence period for title
Title
issues.
for
Specifically.
title.
That makes sense.
And
Refund.
No, so the refund, so where's the refund? Immediate deposit?
so at the end of the due diligence period, if the title, he couldn't resolve the title issues, we would refund.
Earnest
I'd
money.
also,
Okay. Okay, I'll work that in.
I think it would be good to add to that we enter into a purchase and sale agreement in 10 business days, if that's acceptable to,
Yes.
Yeah.
Enter into a PSA within 10 business days from now.
That's still your motion?
Yes.
Is the second okay?
Yes.
There you have it.
You have enough?
I think so.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good work, everybody. That was good.
So the next item I have, Mr. Chairman, is North Park Drive subdivision and property exchange with the city of Coeur d'Alene. So this is the property appraisal divestiture discussion. So I shared this appraisal with you here recently. So this, actually, let me knock that down and bring this up first. So this appraisal reflects the appraisal of these 10 lots that are on our North Park area combined with the Memorial Park project that face North Park Drive. So lots 1 starts here, lots 10 ends over here. So these are the 10 lots that were appraised. And we've been working on this initiative for quite a few months. So the appraisal came in, as you see here, and we asked the appraiser to kind of look at this 2 different ways. If the board or the agency wanted to sell these lots individually, what would the value be? And if the board wanted to sell these 10 lots as basically a block to a single purchaser, what would the value be? So you see the 10 lots are listed individually here, starting with Lot 1 at $209,000, ending at Lot 10 at $198,000 with varying prices in between. If the board were to choose to sell all 10 lots at one time, the discounted value to a single purchaser would be $1.861 million versus individual lot sales of $2.101, which is a delta or a variance of about $240,000. So that would be the hit to the agency of doing a more streamlined approach of divesting this property to a single purchaser and allowing that purchaser to build and develop single-family homes on these lots.
Mr. Mayor?
Question for Danielle, is it, if you put out a solicitation for bids, could you do it 2 ways? Could you say you can bid on all 10 of the lots, or you could bid individually? So could you give them two options?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't give both options. We'd have to set a minimum price per lot and then a minimum price for the whole, I think.
So if we went out and did that, and we said we would sell either 1 through 10 individually, or you could buy all of them, the minimum bid on all of them would be the $1,861,000. The minimum bid on the individual, 1 through 10 are the prices listed there. If we happen to get individual, if someone agreed to buy every single, say somebody wanted to buy just one, but you had 10 individuals that bid, you could get to your 2.1, or if you had just, let's say they only had 3 bids and people wanted to buy them, but you had one person that bid on all 10 of them, you could choose that one as well. So what I'm trying to do is maximize the dollar here if we can.
So what do you do? Say you get some individuals that pay top dollar for 3 or 4 lots in there, then you get a couple of bids for the whole thing. How do you separate that out? I'm just trying to follow that.
I think you'd have to weigh the risk and decide to go one way or the other, because once you offer them for sale, like I said, you can, and if you don't have bids that meet your minimum requirements that you're willing to accept on an individual basis, then you can sell them however the agency sees fit. So then you could choose to list them with a realtor, you could choose to, seek to rebid them at a little bit lower price.
You can, what do you have to do to list them with a realtor?
You have to go through this process. You
Okay.
have to sell them surplus through this sealed bid process. But if that doesn't bring bids, then you can sell them as the agency sees fit.
Or
So
let's
we're
say-
asking, though, if you got a couple of bids on some lots, high dollar bids, but then somebody also bid on all 10 lots? Is that what you're
Yeah, I'm
asking?
just saying, I don't know if you can go back to them and say, hey, we'll go ahead and sell you these 8 lots, but somebody bid big bucks on these 2 lots, so we're not going to sell you the whole 10, we'll sell you 8 lots. I'm just trying to figure how you do that, but I'm going the same direction, though. I'm trying to figure out how to maximize this, because we need to pay for that parking structure. And I don't know if somebody would pay $220 for one of those lots, or if the right person would pay $250. If you're out on the prairie in a subdivision, it's pretty cut and dry what the builders are paying for subdivision lots. But when you're in these gorgeous downtown neighborhoods, there's an intrinsic value. It's hard to figure what the market value is on some of these things. You see prices all over the place. But I guess those could be the minimums, the appraised value, and if it's worth that much more to somebody, they could bid it, I guess. Is that how that would work?
The other alternative is you could go just out with the 10 lots for less complexity and see what happens, and then you could, if that didn't go the way you wanted, you could, because you don't have to accept any bids, you could go back and bid them as a whole.
So you could go out for the 10 lots at 2.1 million?
You could do that, or you could go for the 10 lots individually.
Okay. And then if you didn't get it, you could go back and.
Right, and go back and
bulk
bid them
sale
as
it.
a whole, right.
So if you bid all 10 as a package, does your minimum has to be the appraisal price at the whole package?
It doesn't
or could
have
be
to be the appraisal, that's
Could your
just,
minimum be the individual price for all 10?
it could
You can set
be.
whatever you want.
So maybe the strategy would be, initially you go out and you do 10 individual lots, we see what we get. If we don't get what we want, then you could go back and do a bulk sale.
And you could do a bulk sale for the rest too, right? So you could sell some of them individually, and then you could,
That's a good idea.
But if they're isolated.
But I think you're going to get in Pandora's box there. I mean, there's certain lots here that are a little nicer than other lots. So if we get stuck with the 4 or 5 lots that aren't as nice, then, what's the value of those? I mean, then if you're going to do a bulk sale, you're going to take a discount on those because they're not as nice as the other lots. I mean, what I see right now is that you have 10 lots, some are better than others, some are not quite as good. You're getting an average. And if you're starting to cherry pick, which is, trying to get the best of both worlds, you run into, we're all of a sudden becoming the master here and deciding who's going to get what. I personally, just philosophically think our role is to get the property ready to sell it as a bulk, and not be a realtor. I mean, there's a couple of you guys that are developers and realtors here. That's a whole different role than what Ignite's role is. Our role is not to try to, I mean, our role is to get the highest value possible, obviously, but our role is not to go out and pick winners and losers.
Sometimes I just think like a realtor.
There's not a
It's funny
huge,
how you think that way.
there's not a huge difference between the lot prices, really. I mean,
There really isn't, and I think for us to start picking, bits and pieces for the difference, for the delta between the two, I think is really not philosophically the direction that Ignite should be
I
going.
think you're right on, Mick. I don't think it's our role to be a developer. It's never been our role to be a developer.
And I'm kind of a meet-in-the-middle guy, so I'd look at that and say I'd put out all 10 as a package, probably for 2 million, kind of split the difference between, 1.8 something and 2.1. And if you got the whole package done at once, great.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, I would say we have all kinds of options. Yeah, I agree that we're not a developer, but I think that we do owe it to maximize the value of those lots.
Another thing to think about is if a developer buys it, will they lots get built on quicker, which brings value back to the city sooner?
As you saw in the appraisal, I don't know if you had a chance, the estimated value of the homes ranged from 450 to 950,000 was the estimate. So to Scott's point, the quicker you get the houses built on the lots, the more the tax revenue comes back eventually to the taxing entities.
and if somebody wanted an oversized lot, I'm assuming they could buy 2 adjacent lots?
No.
and-
No.
Not at
Oh,
all.
okay.
Combining, yeah. That was
And here's my thought too, I mean, if you're gonna wanna get this done, built out, you've gotta leave some, once again, delta in there for a developer. I mean, if you're gonna try to get maximum value for this, is if individuals were buying them, it's a little bit different than giving a discount for buying, putting up the $2 million. I mean, there's a risk there, the dollar risk of putting the money up as a developer, and then the absorption risk of getting these built and sold. So I think, it's one thing to say, yeah, 2.1 million for individual lots, because you're asking individuals, 10 individuals to take the risk there versus a developer. I think there's a reason that it's a difference of 1,861,000 versus 2.1 million, and that's the risk that a developer takes. I personally think it's a great opportunity for somebody to come in at, that 1.8 million. We build it out, we sell it, let them develop it, it gets built out, and it's on the tax roll. So that's my opinion.
I'm curious, I can't remember. What is our total acquisition cost? Do you have
For
it?
those properties, about 1.3.
It's about 1.3. And then the development cost,
Right, so the whole summary that was shared by Welch Comer a while back at a board meeting, if we were to sell all 10 lots, and actually to give Welch Comer credit, they came in with an estimated property value of $184,500 a lot, so they weren't too far off on some of this. But if we sold all 10 lots at that price, we would come out about, $250,000 ahead in the pro forma. But the real issue here is just cash flow to us. So the pro forma is nice to see, but really it's, as everybody's talking about it, it's the cash we get. So it's
Yes,
1.86
cash.
million or 2.1 or somewhere in between that is a
Well,
real
the
Speed
point.
of getting the cash
require a
back. I mean,
really
if we
long
try to
time
sell
to-
these over parcels, we might not get them all sold for months.
Well, and meeting the requirement from Washington Trust to,
Yes.
1.3 million is their
we have to
requirement,
sell 1.3 million in property before we can borrow,
more than 6 million.
which we need for the parking garage, right? So
That's
we
correct.
we do need to get them sold fairly quickly.
Mr. Chairman, why wouldn't we just go out and test the market? I mean, you can just put it out there, see what you get. If you don't get what you want, go back to the bulk sale. But if you test the market, so we're all speculating now. We don't really know, right? But if we want to, which I think that we need to maximize the dollar, we can put it out there, put it out 1 through 10 for sale. If it doesn't work out the way that the board wants it, you can always go back to the bulk sale. But you can't do the reverse. So that's just my.
I'm not sure you can do the former either. I mean,
Why not?
if you're going to sell, okay, if somebody comes in and makes an offer to buy a portion of, let's say we sell 5 lots. Are we then going to renege on the deal and say, oh, sorry, we're not going to sell those 5,
No.
we're now going to sell all 10?
You just sell the 5, and then you can put the others on the market and see what you get for the other 5. I just see that, I mean, we're leaving money on the table. And
I don't think we are. I think, I mean, it's an appraisal, obviously, that's the value. I mean, the value is the risk of somebody coming in, each 10 individuals coming in and paying $210,000 a lot versus one developer coming in and paying $186,000 a lot. That's the difference, that's the delta. And the risk, the delta, the reason of the delta is the risk of paying up front for all of that and taking the good with the bad and having to develop over a period of a short period of time.
And you may be right, but why not test the market first?
Time, I guess, would be the biggest reason.
So what's the time frame?
Did your hand up?
Nope,
Oh.
glasses.
When can, well,
Well, to draw on the 10 million note, you have to generate 1.3 million in sales. When is that time frame?
Well, we'd need to, I mean, probably by May, June, right?
Well, we'll start drawing on that note pretty quick here with if we get a contractor on that parking garage in November, we'll probably get our first pay request in December, and so
I don't think we have until May.
we'll be getting after it.
How long does
How
it take
soon-
for a proposal or for bids?
So if this resolution were to go today and you instructed us to get these out to bid, we could set
We have to have a public hearing as
Right.
part of this process, so we'd set that for next
for
month's
November
meeting.
15th,
And then we'd give notice and accept bids in December.
December 20th.
Would we have to do a separate public hearing if we went back for a second bid?
If we did, yes, if we wanted to go through the process a different way.
So now we're looking at another 2-month time lag if we went back for a second bid.
that's,
Well, if you wanted to go back and try to declare them surplus and go through this bidding process again, but if you wanted to just put them on the market, you wouldn't have to do that.
Right, which I'm not sure we want to just put them on the market. I mean, I'm not sure that's our best option. I mean, absorption rate is something that is the key here. How long is it going to take us to get all 10 of these marketed and sold and closed?
This spring and early summer, I think they all would have gone fairly quick. You never know spring to spring what it's gonna be. December's probably the worst time to be doing all this. But at least if we have to regroup and we're getting into late winter, early spring, that's probably a pretty good time to be doing it.
So, Tony, the requirement on the bond draw is, are they saying that you need to sell $1.3 million worth of property? What happens if we have $4 million in the bank?
Their contingency was $1.3 million of real property sales. But
What is our low water mark of what they want us to keep in the?
Million.
$1 million, right? So if our low water mark is $1 million, but we have $4 million in the bank, why would they turn around and say, well, I want you to sell property?
we could have that conversation, but that's what's in the note. That's a condition of the note.
My belief is it's because to make the pro forma work for all the projects that you guys have in the pipeline, you need to sell that property. So they don't want you to get ahead of yourself on the borrowing, knowing that you have things obligated to projects, or at least earmarked to projects moving forward. We could certainly have that discussion with them.
But if you just agreed, say if you didn't have the $1.3 million worth of property to sell, why wouldn't you just increase that floor from $1 million to 2.3? Same thing, right?
It just puts a kind of a encumbrance on the board that you have to keep that level of fund balance.
But if you do the projections, you could tell where that cash balance would fall.
just trying to buy a little time.
Phil, you have a comment? I think Phil has a comment.
He had that comment, look.
It
Yeah.
is related to when you can actually sell the lots, because remember, the lots don't currently exist.
Correct.
Because the plat hasn't been recorded. The plat probably won't be recorded until December, and under Idaho statute, you can't sell a lot until it exists. And the reason, you guys might recall, the Curl property slowed the process down considerably. That was resolved as of yesterday, I think, Mike Gridley. The zone change that was necessary, that was contingent upon the Curl property, won't go in front of city council public hearing until the 21st, I think, Mayor's, when it was on consent calendar yesterday. So if the zone change goes in on the 21st, Once that's completed, goes through the public hearing, then the plating process can be completed in December. So not to muddy your waters too much, but you actually couldn't list the property
So all we
for
can do
sale.
is take lot reservations right now.
Exactly. Some other, and so I just wanted to make sure we weren't saying we were selling the property because you can't technically sell it yet.
We just can't technically close it until after that,
I
right?
think it's actually, you can't list the property. But I don't remember the statute off the top of my head. Yeah,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's a little touchy on subdivisions.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll start out by making a motion. I make a motion that we sell all 10 lots in a bulk sale once the subdivision plotting is in place.
I'll second it.
Are we looking for a motion here for this?
Yes.
Really, your
Yes, we have a
property
resolution.
appraisal.
We have a resolution.
Yeah, resolution 1801. So I left the flexibility in there for us to do it either way. So I would just revise the resolution to reflect
Okay.
a bulk sale, and you'd need to set a minimum price to complete that resolution.
Okay. I would set the minimum price of $1,861,000.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
As a
Discussion.
bulk sale.
Yes.
Okay.
Further discussion.
Okay. Roll call?
Lots of wheels turning, just a second.
Not a roll call? Okay.
Yeah, well, not quite yet.
Is you had the wheels turning?
My wheels were turning.
Okay, go ahead.
One thought, I agree with Mick 100%. The one thought I do have, though, is that's why my wheels are turning, is the price of 2.1 versus the 1.8. So
That's called the risk.
that's,
the
yeah,
risk factor.
yeah, that's true.
I would put it out higher, though. I really would. I mean, we've got one shot at this. We need the money. These are good properties.
Well, we don't have to accept the bid either.
We don't?
Yeah. It'd
Well,
be
if
a
the
lot
bid
of
comes in
time lost,
at the
too.
minimum, we don't have to accept it?
We do
Oh,
have to
if it-
accept the minimum.
Let me look at the statute on that. If we have to accept it if it meets the minimum. I think we do have to accept it if it meets the minimum.
Yes, we do.
Well, why would we put it out if we're not
Right, if we're not gonna
prepared
accept
to
the minimum,
sell it
right.
for that?
Yeah, that's kind of bad to put it out and not accept the minimum.
Complete. I
Uh,
mean, I still kind of like the meet in the middle 2 million, but
I don't know, do we do this now, or do we wait till next month and do it and find out the statute on selling lots that aren't legally platted yet?
If you do it now, since we have these timeframes, so you won't be able to do anything until December. If you do something now, the quickest you'll be able to do anything is December 20th. If you wait, then it gets pushed further back. That's the timing.
So was
Special
Mick's
call.
motion for the minimum 1
Yes.
point? Oh, okay. I agree with that.
I mean, I'm weighing the different ways to do this, and I can see the advantages in getting this all done at one time and not getting into individual sales, but I think if I was to go along with selling this all at one time, I'd probably go on the higher bid for a minimum.
Agreed. At least close.
It's not an easy decision. I mean, there's no,
I would concur if Mick
Choice.
wants to raise
So
the
what,
minimum.
so increase the bid to what?
I have a problem with that. I just think that, once again, you're asking somebody to come in and pay top appraisal for something that really appraises out on, once again, it comes back to the risk of money. And if somebody's going to pay $210,000 a lot, there's a risk there individually carried by each person. Whereas a developer is going to have the absorption risk of time and money. So there's a delta that you got to play with here. And I guess that's why there's two appraisals.
And the minimum, in my mind, it's the minimum. So if there's bids out there and we get 4 bids,
There could be a higher
it
bid.
could be a higher bid than
That's
that,
correct.
so.
Yeah, the minimum's all that's saying is this is the least we will take.
there's no mathematical formula for knowing the exact market value of a piece of property. It's what ready and willing buyer is ready to pay at a certain time. But I've seen indications in the Fort Grounds and these other really prime neighborhoods that there's a higher value there than what this appraisal is. So
And we
that's
might
why
see a higher bid. I mean, who knows? I
I'm
mean,
inclined to go on the higher side of it.
this is not the maximum bid somebody can make, it's the minimum bid.
But aren't they going to try to get as close to the minimum as they possibly can and still get the deal?
Well, yeah, but if there's 5 bids and one person comes in higher than the other one, then the other ones lose.
What's wrong with setting it higher? I mean, really, if we don't get any bids, then we go back. It's an ideal time to sell this property because then you got a spring build. So by the time we're ready to roll with it, well, it'll be just about right for a developer to come in and then he can be building the spring. And the advantage to us is they're up, they're built,
But
and they're
somebody
paying
would pay.
taxes.
I think somebody might pay $250 for a lot.
Mr. Chairman, I guess what you're doing by having a bulk sale is you're really limiting your buyer. So you could have a lot of individuals that are gonna come in there that they have a house plan, hey, I love lot number 1, I'm gonna put a bid on that. And so what you're doing, anytime you limit the number of people that are gonna bid on this project, you're gonna drive the price down.
But you're also,
That's what we're doing,
I mean,
we're limiting the
if
market.
somebody wants to buy it in this, I mean, somebody's going to buy these properties and put them up for sale. I mean,
Well, if I had a house plan that I wanted to do and I wanted to buy lot number 1, I don't want all 10 lots, right? I just
You could
want
buy it
lot
from the
number 1. But
developer.
what you're doing is you're eliminating that person from being able to do it. Because now, instead of I having my house plan that I want to build there, I've got to go through the developer to build it. I think you're really limiting the number of people that are going to bid on this.
Unless you could buy it from the developer, I guess, the land, but, yeah.
I don't know exactly how you put this, but I've seen a number of, investors and business people, and I mean, they are as shrewd and tight as can be when it comes to business, but when it comes to their own personal residence, it doesn't need to pencil, it's their own residence, and they'll pay top dollar for something for their own residence. So if a developer is buying this, the developer is going to be looking at getting this as cheap as he can, because he's going to be looking at the cost of the houses and what he thinks he can sell them for in the market and so forth. So a developer is going to be really sharpening his pencil on this. The one thing I can see, it's more trouble, but if you do sell them individually, I don't know what these are worth to somebody moving up here from out of state or somebody locally that can foot the bill and wants to have their dream home in the Fort Grounds, and there's no property available in the Fort Grounds, and they're buying houses for $300,000 and knocking them over to get a lot. So it puts it into selling them individually to somebody, puts it into a different category over selling them to a for-profit developer. I'm
Should you
just
wait
throwing
then
that out there.
until a more attractive
Is
time
that
to
kind
be
of what you're
selling?
thinking? Yeah.
Would it be better than if you waited until a more attractive buying time for single lots?
who knows when that is?
Well, I mean, generally spring.
The spring is usually a hotter market and everything really gets going, and usually the prices notch up every spring in a rising market. I'm not saying this is a bad time to do it though, because it's a pretty unique, some unique properties there. There's a very, very limited supply. There's a scarcity of supply in the Fort Grounds. It's a whole different thing.
But we're speculating again, and the assessments could go down by spring.
Yeah, it sounds to me like by the time we got to check on the rules on pre-selling subdivision lots, but I do remember there's that code he's talking about. You've got to be really careful on marketing lots that aren't platted yet.
I know that from my county recorder days, yeah.
Yeah. And so we're probably talking, really January before we can probably do this. I mean, we're talking maybe December, but it's in the middle of the holiday season, so we might be really in right after the first of the year. And I'm not saying wait till April or May. I don't have a problem doing this in January. And if that doesn't work, we've still got time. Spring is coming. So I don't know what the total answer is. I'm just throwing some of these ideas out here. It's more trouble to sell them individually, but I think it puts it into a whole a whole different category over an individual buying it for their dream home versus a for-profit developer trying to buy it as cheap as he can and then, and then make the profit.
Olivia?
Well, I definitely would hate to see a cookie cutter style development going, and so I agree with the mayor and Scott, the fact that it would be great to have that solution of individual lots, but I don't know that to have that surplus of, like Mick was saying, as maybe we get stuck with 3 lots that can't sell, is the biggest concern, because we don't have that sort of time. But if we could figure out a solution to, if we could put it out there right away as in terms of 10 lots all at once and see what type of market we can see, but how fast can we turn around another bid package to put it out as a,
Well, I mean, you have to have the public hearing, which you have to have in the paper 14 days in advance, so you could speed it up, and then you have to give the notice to submit bids, which I think is another 14 days. And we typically do it a month at a time just because of your meeting schedule. We could probably compress that some if you guys were willing to do special meetings to turn around another package, but you're definitely going to have in excess of 2 weeks because of publication requirements in between, setting the price, adopting the first resolution, having the public hearing, and then actually releasing it for bids. And you do have to accept the highest bid, and assuming it's above your minimum.
Are those lots ready to develop? Do they have sewer and water to each lot, and are they ready to go now?
Yes. But they're,
They have to be platted.
They will, yeah.
the legal plat is not complete.
So by the nature of the fact that it's the process we're discussing, we would have to go with the highest priced bidder if we sold. So we wouldn't have the luxury of talking to a developer about what style or what idea they were trying to develop. It's merely a money transaction for us. So we do give up any influence, I wouldn't say control, but influence on what type of structures get developed there, other than the fact they're single-family
The other
homes.
alternative is that you could sell it as a DDA project where you can put more restrictions on it. But then you can put more restrictions on it that way, but then you're selecting, it's a different process and it's more time consuming, and you'd have to go with the developer route. You couldn't sell the lots individually with
At a lesser
PDAs.
price.
Which would be probably, way less.
Right, then you get into having to sell it for the fair reuse value.
And if we sold them individually, it would be the agency's responsibility to manage the sales through a broker or however we decided to do that. We wouldn't have, but
Well,
we
if we
would still
sold them
be the
through the
owner,
bid
right?
process, Tony and I would just handle it. We'd just enter into individual, very simple purchase and sale lot
But you really don't have
agreements.
any control over what somebody builds architecturally,
Right,
other than
absolutely.
within the building envelope.
Right,
But
understood.
Phil can speak to this, but there are going to be building envelopes on the lots. So we know that they're not going to be building, like lot line to lot line.
Well, I guess I was trying to address the concern that Commissioner Arman and Commissioner Metz had regarding those less desirable lots, perhaps, that would still fall on the agency to manage that process until such a time as those got sold, however long that might take.
Yeah, in a given subdivision, you've always got premium lots and less desirable lots. But as the lot inventory is used up, prices start to go up and there's fewer and fewer lots, people buy the less desirable lots. It all seems to work out. I don't know, does it make any sense to put half the lots in a package to a developer?
I would just,
Okay.
how many lots are for sale right now in the Fort Grounds?
Oh, I don't know, let's see.
None. Right?
Dan?
I'm just throwing that out there to try.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as the discussion about, kind of the loser lots or something, when I look at this, I mean, it's pretty tough. I mean, you're really splitting hairs between whether it's the better lot or not. They're all going to be, next to the new park and all of that, and the parking, every one of them is premium, so.
I agree, I don't see any loser lots.
Yeah.
I've seen worse lots than that sell for more money than the worst lot in here. That's why I'm,
Yeah, it's not like one's
that's
got
why
a
I'm just a
view or
little bit
not,
concerned
or-
about leaving a lot of money on the table. And we may get criticized for competing with private development, private enterprise, but we don't do this all the time. This is excess property we wound up with, and I think, for the most part, most of the taxpayers would probably say they want us to maximize the money and not, leave money on the table for a developer, So we need all the money we can for public
You have a
improvements.
motion on the table.
And seconded.
So how do you want to deal with this?
We'll take it to a vote.
So, okay, so the motion I have is by Commissioner Harmon, second by Commissioner Goodlander, to sell the 10 lots as a whole for a minimum of $1,861,000. Roll call? Roll call? Goodlander?
Yes.
Metz?
Yes.
Harmon?
Yes.
Whitmire?
No.
Jordan?
No.
English?
No.
Garcia? No.
No.
Hoskins?
No.
Chapkus?
No.
Motion fails.
Pardon?
Where do we go next?
Another
Been
motion?
a while since we last
I would
spoke.
make a motion to sell the individual lots 1 through 10 at the stated appraised prices,
And that's the minimum bid
the minimum bid.
Second.
individually.
Now, you're talking the high side of the price?
Yes.
Whatever the prices are, so, well, lot
The
1 is
listed-
209, lot 2 is 198.
Right, the higher
So the
ones for an
minimum-
individual, okay, all right,
Oh, so,
I'm okay with
2.1
that.
if they all,
so your motion was individual?
So sell all lots individually for the price listed in the appraisal?
Correct.
So 10 separate transactions.
Is there a second?
Jim seconded
okay.
it.
Further discussion?
Philosophically, I just have a problem with us individually being a broker. I just don't think that's the role of Ignite, to us be individually selling lots. I mean, we have never done it before. We've always sold as a block. And now all of a sudden, we're going to go out and we're going to compete individually with 10 lots on the market. That's a philosophical difference that we've never done, and I find it wrong. So that's why I proposed the original proposal to sell as a block and not 10 individual lots.
I understand a lot of that logic and stuff, and the thing that bothers me is it's $250,000 delta.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, it's all of this is speculation, but I think we should try it, so.
And I actually agree with Mick overall. I just
I
think
do
this is a
too.
unique situation.
I do too.
But we're having a lot of unique situations. What's going to happen with Tilford Lane? What's going to happen with the property that we're buying over in the Atlas Mill site? I mean, there's going to be a number of other, I mean, this is Pandora's box. We're opening a little bit of a precedent here of how we're going to go forward. I mean, Tilford Lane, there's a potential, 22 lots there? Are we going to sell 22 lots?
17.
17? So all of a sudden, we're going to be individually selling individual lots. All of a sudden, Ignite's going to be out in the market, developing property and selling individual lots in Tilford, here on North Park Drive, potentially on Atlas. There's going to be a lot of lots there, potentially. That's a lot of property that we have the ability now to go out and sell individual lots to the individual buyer. Now, number one, that's a lot of risk to the agency. But number two, I just think philosophically, now we're getting into the development game and we're starting to compete in the real estate market.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, I guess my point there is that I think we have an obligation to maximize the dollars of the taxpayer.
And Steve, I don't disagree with you there. I just.
I think that overrides that.
Okay.
Roll call.
So, Whitmire, Chapkus, roll call. Goodlander?
No.
No?
No.
Metz?
No.
Harmon?
No.
Whitmire?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
English?
yes,
Garcia?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Hoskins?
Yes.
Chapkus?
Yes.
So, 6 yeses, 3 nos. So, motion carries. So we will endeavor to persevere on that front.
Thanks, everyone, for that good discussion. It's not easy.
So the next agenda item, Mr. Chairman, is Memorial Park Project Update and Memorial Field Grandstand Initiative Discussion. So first up will be Phil Boyd with Welch Comers to kind of give you a quick update on Memorial Park and make a proposal to you. And the screen, there's the screen.
Thank you, Chairman Hoskins and commissioners. Okay, this is just a little bit of a project update, project status report. A couple of bullet points up there for you. The obvious one, I think most of you have driven by and seen, the memorial field is complete. When I say the field is complete, the irrigation system's in, it's been reoriented, hydroseeded. The poles are around it. The fencing that is around it is not the permanent fencing. So if you look at it and think it looks ratty, it's because it's temporary fencing. The pickleball courts are finished, the overhead power is removed. The water line has been relocated. That was actually a change condition we found. And of course, best laid plans, we actually dug test holes. The city dug test holes for us on the water line in places we could before the project even started during design phase. We surveyed them in. And of course, just 20 feet towards Northwest Boulevard, it ended up being, there was a vertical change in it, and our retaining wall was on top of it, so we had to move the water line. We think the additional costs for that will fit within our contingency budget, so our project is still under budget. But it did add some expense to it. The retaining wall will be complete tomorrow. The subdivision infrastructure that you were just discussing is 90% complete. The parking lot will be completed by the end of November. And the park restrooms actually need some input, and I'll get to that. Familiar topic or project, you guys have seen that overview before. Just a couple of shots here. There's the park. You can see this is where the netting will be on these tall poles here, but you can notice the reoriented alignment. We call this the Dick Stoffer alignment because he was so passionate about it. But it does look great. Once you, this is standing up at the entrance, looking back towards it, and as Dick had emphasized, you really see how close that pulls the field to the road and makes it look nice. A couple other shots in there. This is the futsal court, and since we're giving credit, we'll give credit where credit is due. Mayor Widmeyer, was that his idea to bring futsal into this? This is just the under pavement. It actually gets a surface on it called plexi-pave, so there'll be a lot of color to it once it's finished. And then this over here is the pickleball courts. Another shot of them there. They're very flat surfaces, which is why one of our engineers took that picture, because he was so excited about how flat they made it. You can see the retaining wall being under construction here. Another shot of that type of retaining wall. This is a new product, new to Coeur d'Alene. One of the local suppliers is manufacturing this. It goes up faster. It's actually less expensive and easier to work with. You can see they're hollow.
Yeah, it looks a lot better than the old retaining wall.
Yeah. There's another shot of it. A couple other pictures there of it. Moving on to the restroom discussion. This was the original restroom configuration that Miller-Stoffer had developed. We had brought this forward to the board when the bids were open. We had budgeted $300,000 for it. The bids came in at $390,000. Maybe we could have fit it within the budget. It would have been difficult, and at the time, the board elected not to move forward with that. So we moved towards this prefabricated option, which Bill Greenwood has used in other parks. Board elected and said, let's move forward with those. The budget on this was about $200,000. I continued to feel bad because I didn't like these in the park, and had some discussions with Bill to determine if he would care if Dick Stoffer and I took another crack at the design. And I say Dick Stoffer and I should just say Dick takes another crack at the restroom design to get something not slightly nicer than this, but maybe not as detailed as this design. So Bill agreed with us to take a crack at that, And this is what the prefabricated structure looked like. And so Dick has come up with a little simpler design, and you can kind of see here, this is the picnic shelter side of it, and if need be, Dick can come up and give you guys some more detail. This is the restroom side of it, and you can see that the plan view is simpler than the previous one as well. We estimate this is a 260, 265 cost to this facility. It would require advertising a separate bid, which is, there's some method to that madness as well. In the overall project, we have a general contractor, and this is a specialty. Just like he has a sub that comes in and does his electrical work, he has a building contractor that's a subcontractor to him. We're paying some sort of markup on him, and we're also, as on your parking garage, a little bit subjected to the current construction climate. In this scenario, what we would propose doing is advertising the project for bid, giving them a completion time that says, project's got to be, this toilet has to be finished July 15th or later, and advertise the project now, put it out as a standalone bid. Now we'll be able to attract a number of bidders, we think, because the project is smaller. It's a $260,000 project as opposed to a $1.8 million project. Lower public works license, more contractors to bid on something like that. So we've kind of been working on this. Dick's put a little bit of this design together, but before we took it completely across the finish line, we wanted to get the board's input if they'd like us to move forward in that direction.
Can you go back to the elevations? I mean, okay, so that, and then that the first one you showed.
This was the original
Okay,
one.
So is are the ones on the right part of the ones on the left, is that all the same thing?
It's the different views. It's just
Okay.
different elevation views.
I didn't know if the ones on the right were the
No.
newer one. Okay.
Nope, this was the original, and you can see there's two different roof alignments in there. and-
I wondered, yeah, there was
Yeah.
a simpler roof on.
Yes, yeah, that's just two different views,
Okay,
Commissioner
all
Jordan.
right.
Mr. Chairman. Phil, did you mention that if the board were to be agreeable with this, we'd still be within budget and under budget?
Correct, yeah, I don't want to, we're under budget. I won't throw out the number that we're under budget unless you make me, because there's still projects, there's still things to move forward, but we're still working within the means between Ignite, the city of Coeur d'Alene, and our other county funding sources. So we have a fixed budget, and we've just been managing within that.
So this new structure would come under that budget?
It would, yeah, we would still, if our total project cost on this was $270,000, and based on what I know now, and we're coming out of the ground, and that's when you're at most risk, is once you get out of the ground, most of your risk, I'll knock on wood, is gone. We would still be under budget on the project, which, is a positive thing, because the money will get obviously diverted to other projects Bill has and Ignite has.
Just to confirm, it will have indoor plumbing because Councilman Gookin's pretty
Yes.
fixated on
Yeah, yes.
indoor, okay.
Yep, very nice flush toilets, yep. Dick, you might.
And just, this reflects back on the parking garage discussion. This building, the indoor portion of the toilets is about 600 square feet. So you can do the math at 360, 380. It's a restaurant. Granted, it was a nice restroom. But what we've done is we've taken it from a masonry project and we've made it into a carpentry project. That's the biggest. The floor plan is the same amount of toilet fixtures, the same amount of covered picnic area, but it's obviously a much simpler structure. It's just, and I hate to say this, but it's dumbed down to its simplest form. But I think from your park director standpoint, this is a very low-maintenance facility. It will last a long time, but instead of a 100-year metal roof, we've got a 40-year comp roof. We don't have any masonry on the job. Instead of 8 columns with protected bathroom entries, we now have 3 columns on the job. And I think this, as opposed to the parking structure, this was something we could attack it from a lot of different ends, and I think we attacked about everything that we could. And so without promising anything, we're confident that this can get into Phil's projected area and be an asset to your budget rather than an anchor. So, any questions?
Thanks.
Okay.
Brett.
So what's the, so there's a little bit of masonry, I guess, where the columns are.
That is
So-
concrete with some form, a little bit of form line
So I
on
mean,
it.
it's, yeah, it's like masonry kind of, yeah.
Yes, it's,
How about the base of it? Is that concrete that's got some, some design in it along the walls there, or?
yeah, that's a rustication joint. Basically, that's just a piece of wood stuck inside the form to make it look like it might be
Yeah,
kind of
some
board
bevel- Some
formed.
beveling in there to give it some style.
Yes,
So that's,
give it a little shadow line and a little bit of.
so that's
texture.
where that'll take a lot of the beating, and so then the wood part is pretty well protected, so that'll last a long time.
Yeah,
and
and
be low
that's,
maintenance.
and that translates with these public restroom facilities, that translates into the inside where you need to be on bulletproof from that area down.
Right.
So that takes care of that concern as well.
I think it looks great. I think it's a good compromise. It's 100 times better than the prefab ones like you'd see at a BLM boat launch or something.
And I think that was, Phil made that point, and I think Bill's in agreement, that if we can make something that's at least semi-custom, we're ahead of the prefabricated structures.
Dick, how about vandalism? Does the wood make a big difference versus?
It is actually not wood.
Oh, it is not?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is concrete and metal, and on the inside is actually, the bathroom areas are actually lined with Corian, which you're familiar with, is a real premium product. But that is kind of the best, but that's how we deal with the wood. So it's an OSB lined structure with metal on the outside and Corian on the inside.
Thanks.
So the guys that take care of them will love it.
Need to,
I don't think the board needs a motion. I think just head nods
Just-
is, there's no objection to this.
Yeah, good compromise.
The,
Phil probably couldn't sleep at night worrying about
He
that
was,
prefab
yeah.
thing.
so the next visitor for the board is Bill Greenwood, who wants to chat with you about the skateboard park element of Memorial Park project.
Good evening. Thank you, Tony. I just wanted to give you a little update on our skate park. As you all know, the location of the skate park is this yellow band here. And some good news and bad news. The good news is that we've been working with Grindline, who is a skate designer, and we've been working with the skate community, and they've been all engaged, and they're very excited about what they've designed. The bad news is we did not get the grant we were looking for. So within your budget for this project, you had participated for $200,000 in the match. That was the match, and we asked for $200 from the state. We did not get it. So I'm here to talk to you about a partnership with the Parks Department, how we can make this happen for the spring. I have some capital in my Parks Improvement Fund, and I was wondering if you would entertain helping out with this additional shortage that we have to fund the skate park.
How much?
How much would you like to give?
What's the shortage?
Shortage is 200,000.
We're short 200, yes.
So how much do you have in your parks fund?
I can squeeze out about 50K.
So you're about 150 short.
Yeah, what I did is I had to help the project for Memorial with the utilities. So I had a couple hundred set aside, but I've been picking away at that to help for these relocation of utilities, and I'm into it already for 125, and I expect about another 30 or 40 that's going to come out of that budget.
I'd like to know what the change is with the new, if you redid the bathrooms and additional funding for the skate park, what that, you mentioned that, Phil mentioned that we were under budget, but what is, we're closing in deep.
Your
I just want to
budget
know
for the, go ahead, Phil.
what that delta is.
I know Commissioner Retz wanted to know, if our bathroom comes in at 260, and based on some of the changes that we see, that the water line I mentioned to you, I estimate we're going to have 30,000, something like that, that will be under budget.
Okay.
And that would be, our anticipation would be, that would be money that would go back to Bill's Parks Capital Fund. Because remember, the budget has Ignite funds in it, NIC funds in it, county funds in it, city funds that are come from multiple sources out of the city as well. Yeah, so That would be our overall budget, we had about 30 under.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there is a proposal on the table, and I don't want to put any pressure on North Idaho College, but I believe that they, there is a contribution that they've agreed to, and it's gone through the board level, that they're going to make a contribution to the grandstand. Just throwing that out there. It could be right around $150,000. Right, Sarah?
That's great to
I
hear.
actually don't know anything about that. I cannot comment on
So
that at this
but
time.
that is on the table, and it has gone through the board. There hasn't been any document signed on that, but it's pretty well agreed upon that they were going to contribute, because they felt that, their softball program utilizes Memorial, and they wanted to participate in the upgrading of that grandstand. So that's hopefully going to be available.
Is that going to be an item here, just next is the grandstand upgrade? So do we have a number on that? I guess as long as we're talking trading horses here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to have all of it in front of us so we could set a,
Bill, you've kind of known all along that that grant was nebulous, didn't you?
Honestly, I was naive and hopeful. We were told by the state that our grant looked really good. We had mirrored what Lewison had done, and they had done real well with that. Unfortunately, there was a member of that board who had a grant or a proposal for the same grant for a skate park down south. And she really rode us hard on questioning us and voted against it, and ultimately turned the tide, and we didn't win the grant. If they hadn't been there with that new proposal that they were building for their community, I believe we would have got it. So we were jacked thinking we were going to get it for certain. It was real disappointing.
Yeah.
Have we looked at any corporate sponsorships, or?
The Skate Park Association has, and they've talked to some Tony Hawk Foundation and some others, and that's not getting a lot of traction right now. In this plan, they've actually, this is phase one, there's another element, a bowl that might go here, or it might go here. So they were targeting, once this is up, they believe they can get more energy and a grant from those sorts of foundations. And so we haven't given up on them.
Deanna?
Just a question financially. Can we pull this off without too much of a,
It's always trade-offs.
it's always trade-offs.
Horse trading.
Well, the reason I say that is, we built basketball courts, we've built all kinds of, the skateboarders have kind of been odd man out, and I'd really like to support them if we can.
Deanna, I agree. I look at it, we're building a futsal court, which, I mean, I think a lot of people don't even know what futsal is. And we're building pickleball courts. The skateboarders, yeah, they're always on the outside looking in. They are really a passionate group, there's no question.
Well, and we're really progressive. I mean, some years back, we didn't have a BMX track.
Right.
And so I think we're real forward-thinking in futsal and pickleball as well. And so.
I'm not saying that. I think it doesn't fit in our role as to do this. Once again, it's priorities. I mean, I think we spent more money on the parking structure than we thought we were going to. It's now a matter of, there's probably other projects that bills would like to see funded somewhere down in the next 4 years.
That's correct.
That if we do 200,000 here, that's $200,000 less that we look at it. As a finance committee, we look at this all the time, as where's the needs and where's the revenue, and we try to balance that.
One idea would be, given Commissioner Widmeyer's input, is that you can make a contingent agreement saying that, you could agree to, the request of an extra $150,000, making the agency's commitment $350,000 if this NIC, overture materializes for the grandstand. Could you have $1 million in the budget for that? And we'll talk about that there shortly, but that could be a trade-off.
The front to the skateboard park.
And is this an annual grant? I mean, because there's been a lot of them where, you don't get it this year, but you go back next year.
We can't go until 19.
Oh.
So it's a 2-year cycle.
Okay.
So,
So then it's really down the road, yeah.
right, and in the future, though, once this is established and built, we would go, if the Tony Hawk Foundation wasn't available to help with the bowl that I just
Or the
spoke
phase
to,
two,
we
yeah.
could get go after it again.
And once again, I'm sure it's much more feasible to do it right now than waiting 2 years to come back in and
And there's certainly, Commissioner, there's a lot of energy, and I think there would be really grave disappointment if we weren't able to get it done, because we've been telling folks we're going to do it this spring. So
And we took away the other one, right? I mean, the existing.
yes, we did. And what we did
So-
do for them, and it's just a Band-Aid, really, we removed those elements that were transportable, the blue ones they're kind of wood and metal, and we put them over at the parking lot at Sunset Field. And so I think they call it the Vagabond Skate Park, the Refugee Skate Park, that's what they call it. So they have something to hold them over, but they certainly are excited to get it done this spring.
Yeah, it's always a problem competing with South Idaho.
Okay?
Well, I would propose that we do that. We look at $150,000 towards the skate park with the caveat that we receive funding from North Idaho College, Sarah,
I have nothing.
Offset funds.
offset funds, for the Memorial Park rebuild, or the Memorial Stadium rebuild.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Any more? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to recuse.
One recused. Exclamation point. Motion
Thank
carries.
you so much.
It'll be good.
Next is just an update, I kind of blend this all together, is that last year we were, the board was shown the potential for rehabbing the Memorial Field Grandstand. You saw the presentation, the cost estimate was $1 million. We agreed to put $1 million in the Lake District budget for that initiative, and I just wanted to bring it up for discussion that the timing's probably right to consider what you want to do on that initiative. Do you want to move forward with it? Do you want to think more about it? Do you want to kind of engage talent to start, amassing the wisdom and the energy around that initiative, since you have money in the budget for it? Just wanted to kind of get your pulse on this one.
Kind of surprised we have any money left.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that it's probably a good time to move forward with the planning of it, so we're middle of October now, so if we move along with the plan that we're ready, and if it gets approved, we're ready to start it in the spring. I think that would be.
I agree with the whole Memorial Park being rebuilt. It'd be nice to get it done, and the skate park, and get that whole section done.
So what resources do we engage on that front? Do we work with city staff, or do we look at external resources to continue the evaluation? Because remember, the Miller-Stauffer product was kind of a conceptual idea about how this would come together with, I guess it was a little fairly tight on the numbers, but it would probably take a little bit more work to get it fine-tuned and get it to a point. Am I speaking correctly, Dick?
It's more than a little fine-tuned.
I was wondering if we couldn't have Dick address this, maybe.
This, if you recall, I think the request from the board was have really a good structural analysis on what were the challenges with the grandstand, and primarily from a structural. And so we did a rather exhaustive as-built and analysis of the grandstand, and then quantified the improvements that needed for it to be a kind of a 50-year plus investment, so that it would stay there. And the executive summary said it is far more prudent to put some money into it than to tear down and start over. That was the first conclusion. The second conclusion is, if you are inclined to make improvements, AKA restrooms, concessions, ticket sales, park support, it is most efficient to do that in conjunction with the structural improvements, because you get double bang for your buck. The walls that form those spaces can also supply the
the structural reinforcements. And so anyway, you do that, and then there's some mechanical and electrical things that go along with those. So the best bang for your buck is to do all that together. Is there a specific design on that? No, I think that kind of has to go to, like all these others, you go to a subcommittee of your group and say, what is it that we really want here? Do we, how much do we want to support the carousel? Is Bill going to tear down that other restroom that I think he's put off putting money into in the park? What is, the multi-purpose aspects of Memorial Field now? Do we want to be able to, have good ticket sales, gate control, so that we can do different types of events as well as not just softball tournaments, but do other things at Memorial Field? And what kind of support do those need there? So there needs to be, it's not an exhaustive thing, but there needs to be some programming and some specific design to put those things into play. It's, the building is what it is. We're not looking to, make it bigger, but I think as you saw from the early renderings, we're looking to put some canopy on the carousel side, so there's protective areas, there's some doors and windows in that area, and then there's just the kind of the infrastructure that goes into play. So yeah, there's a design effort that needs to go into that, and that was one of the numbers that was in that bulk number.
Yeah, the number that was in the study was $958,000, so that's why we budgeted $1 million. So maybe the idea is that maybe the agency can ask Bill Greenwood with the city to maybe take the point on this and kind of put a strategy together and come back to the board with a proposal on, how to proceed. Would that be reasonable?
Yeah.
If he's in,
Potential
come over
uses, or potential
Yeah, I
kinds of
suspect there's some
uses.
players out there that maybe you are thinking of that have been saying, if this was here, and I think, NIC certainly comes to mind. The carousel, now with a little bit of history under their belt here, they can say, well, this is what we really need to be successful. And, there's been a lot of help in their way, but certainly if they add bathrooms and concessions and ticket sales right there, that you can see intuitively that would be helpful to them. Anyway, I think there's some of that brainstorming that needs to be done, and I'm sure Bill has lots of thoughts.
Should we make a motion to that, or just, I can work with Bill to kind of get this thing moving and bring it back to the board with a little more strategy around it and probably some costs associated with it.
Do you want to have Bill attend to the ad hoc committee, similar to what Sam did to the parking one?
Yeah.
or-
So I'll work with Bill on moving this forward, okay?
You looking for members for that committee?
Let me get back to you on that. I'm assuming Bill's nodding his head over there to be a partner, so that's good. So just a few final issues under my report, just some initiative updates. Engineering services RFQ went out here recently. We had 4 submittals of qualifications submitted, and the ad hoc committee will address those and bring back a recommendation to the board on how to pull the 3-firm roster together. The Midtown RFP was released on September 29th, as you know, and the proposals are due January 12th, 2018, so that is out there in the development world. And the Ignite at Riverstone initiative, which was formerly referred to as Tilford Lane Initiative, so we've got a new name for it now to make everybody squared away. So it's Ignite at Riverstone. That project is still underway with Watchcomber for due diligence efforts, and we're still working on the proposal for the land exchange with the city. So that is moving forward. There's some challenges with it, but we're still kicking the tires on it. So we'll bring that back to the board when ready. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The lengthy one. It's time for the board commissioner comments. Comments by commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, well, I just wanted to add, and I announced this at the council meeting last night, that Councilman Ron Edinger is going to be inducted into the Idaho State Hall of Fame in April. So I think that serving 50 years in city government will get you into the Hall of Fame. I think that's a well-deserved award for Ron, so if anyone sees him, congratulate him on that.
Will do.
Only 50 years.
50 years, wow.
You're almost there, Brad.
Yeah.
Any other comment? Now it's time on the agenda for the public comment. Public comment? Seeing none, now we'll need a roll call to enter executive session. Somebody
We need a motion.
move
Go into
for that?
executive session under Idaho Code Section 74-206.
Second.
Subsection 1B and subsection 1C.
Right, I guess I should.
Still second?
Still second.
Roll call, Goodlander.
Yes.
Okay, Metz.
Yes.
Harmon.
Yes.
Whitmire.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Hoskins.
Yes.
Chapkus. Che, yes.
It's a wrap.